Hi everybody, it's Chris Petri. Thanks so much for coming by. I really appreciate that everyone is coming here on a weekly basis, a monthly basis, and year after year to learn watercolor. Basically, I'm going to cover all the methods, techniques, and processes you need for watercolor. We're creating a gorgeous beginner's type watercolor doing the glazing technique. I'm going to cover everything you need to know about the glazing technique in this video and how you're going to use that glazing technique to create this beautiful landscape scene with everything, the trees, the branches, the water, the distant mountains, the foreground, the weeds, the brush, the reflections in the water, the birds, everything, all the details from the very beginning all the way to the end, doing all the details. We're going to cover it here on my video. So just take your brushes, your paper, your paints, put them on your table, in your lap, however you like to work, and just join along with me here. We're going to have a great time doing this painting. We're going to cover, again, the whole enchilada, the whole chock full of nuts information you need to do this landscape painting, which is gorgeous with water, again, and a lake scene. Can't get better than this for landscapes. And again, we're using the glazing technique, which most pro artists use for the most part. More often than not, all your top pro artists use the glazing technique. So you're learning what all the top pros are doing right now out in the watercolor world. So enjoy it, and we'll be right back. And I always wanted to mention, too, that I have a new book that just came out, Watercolor Methods for Success. I'm hoping you're going to pick this up if you watch my channel. This basically will help you to understand the techniques and methods I use in watercolor on my YouTube channel. So if you're buying this book and purchasing this book at a very reasonable price on Amazon.com, all you got to type in is Watercolor Methods for Success into Amazon.com. You'll find my book, and it'll be a perfect companion for all of my painting that I do on YouTube. So if you're watching me on YouTube, this is just a great book. You're going to get all the methods and techniques I use. I use the glazing technique quite often in this book on my examples of all my paintings. We have a lot of flower paintings, beautiful still life paintings. We do all kinds of wonderful glazing technique, alla prima technique. I cover also my practice techniques, and as well, all the basic fundamentals of theory for watercolor, so you can learn all the basics of theory as you go. And then I cover all my supplies and everything I use, so that if you're bumping up to the next level eventually, and you want to learn about all my supplies that I use, if you're going on to the next level, and you're really getting interested in watercolor a lot, where you're going to start to invest in a little bit better, pencils and brushes and stuff like that, and paper. I'll have all that. All that is covered in my book. So you'll see all the paper I use, brushes, pencils, paints, everything like that. So it's a really beautiful book. Here's the cover. I think I'll zoom back out a little bit here so you can see the cover of my book. My brand new book. I'm really happy about this, really excited. I'm thankful. Thank you so much for all the people that have already bought it. Many of my students here on YouTube have bought this book, and they love it. They say they're really excited about it. So you can't go wrong. And let's get into the video, okay? So we'll be right back, and we'll start our setup process for our painting, the whole enchilada, everything. How we're going to set up the paper, how we're going to tape the paper down, how we're going to get all of our measurements for this painting, what kind of water containers are we using, brushes, the whole deal, okay? So we'll be right back. Okay, we just saw the finished painting, everyone. Let's get started here. Let's have a fun time. Let's enjoy ourselves. Let's take our time and learn all the steps we want to kind of follow through on that's going to get us to the finished painting. So I think I'll zoom in just a touch here. That might look a little better. So the first thing I guess I'll mention is we have our Prang Oval 16 watercolor set. Now this is a beginner set. You can kind of see it here. Let me see if I have a better... This is the same Prang Oval 16 watercolor set. And what we do is we use this set because it's a beginner's friendly set, obviously. All you have to do is open it up, spritz it with some water, some fresh water in a spritzer bottle. You can buy these anywhere, five and dime stores, or you can get them online on Amazon, so on and so forth. Art stores, any kind of art supply store online, or even if you go out to your big box stores like Michael's or Blick's or whatever, you can find these. Blick's has an online store too. So you find these spritzer bottles, you find these Prang Oval 16 on the internet, and you have yourself a great beginner's palette. And what's great about this palette is, this is kind of like really not a palette video, but we're just starting out here. We're beginners. We're going to paint a beautiful landscape painting, and we're going to kind of just go through the little steps here that we might go through to say, like, I'm just going to pretend you're with me here. Maybe you're in my studio. I'm going to pretend you're kind of maybe alongside me here and looking what we're doing. And so I'm just going to kind of explain it that way. So I'm just going to pretend you're here right next to me, and I'm just going to explain it in a basic, format here, so we can kind of just get up to speed on how I'm doing everything here. So again, the Prang set is a perfect beginner set. Reason being is great colors. You can just take your spritzer bottle, spritz it in like 2 or 3 minutes. The paints will be all nice and moist and soft, and you can start painting right away. And then when you're done painting, whether it's if you paint every day or every other day or once a week, it's simple. Once you're done painting, you close your palette and you put it set here, your oval Prang 16. You set it to the side, and when you're ready to paint again, you do the same thing. You just open it up, spritz a little bit to get the paints moist here, and that's all you have to do, and you can start painting again. So there's no worrying about it if the paints are going to dry out. Once you get really rocking and rolling, maybe a couple years into painting or a year into painting, you can start buying your tube paints, and you can get a palette that's a little, maybe something you might want some more mixing areas, larger mixing areas or whatever. But this is a perfect beginner set for your first 1 to 2 to even 3 years as you're starting out. But it's up to you. Maybe some of you are going to really want to move into more expensive gear to start with, or maybe once after you're just painting for 6 months or a year. It's up to you. But this is, again, a great beginner set even as you start out your first couple of years. This is all you would really need, for the most part, just to get your feet wet, see if you're going to like it and if you want to keep painting. So that's, our palette, and then our brushes. We receive a paintbrush with our palette. With your Prang Oval 16 set, you receive a free brush with your set like this. It's a nice round brush, so it's good for fine details. And then I went out and I bought, when I was working on my setup for my beginner series, I bought a Princeton and Art brush company set. Maybe it's like 5 or 6 brushes in a pack. I might have a brush or 2 over here I don't have with me right now that are in that pack, but as you can see, you get quite a few brushes, 5 or 6 or 7 brushes in one pack for like $10, and these are perfect starter brushes. You have like a round brush or 2, a couple flat brushes, and then maybe there's another round brush or 2 in there. So you get a lot of brushes for just a little cost. Perfect, again, for beginners, these type of brushes. So we're going to use these here on this video. And then what else do we have? We have just a simple glass with some water. It's a heavy bottom glass here. So it's one of those, glasses for, for dining, for dinner, breakfast, whatever, lunch, fancy. It's not really fancy. It's just got a heavy, thick bottom, which makes it pretty much very heavy at the bottom, weighted, so that when you just set it on your table, if you bump it, it's not going to tip over. So you want something with a heavy bottom. And also, too, if you don't want to do that and you want to go with a collapsible water container, you can use those too. Most artists use these. A lot of artists use these, watercolor artists. It's collapsible. You can squeeze it and squish it down, make it real small, bring it in your backpack if you're going to go out and paint outdoors or whatever, or if you're going to tote around your paints on vacation or excursions and so forth. But these are really nice too. And then the small sponge to check some water off. So whenever you're painting in watercolor, what you're going to want to do is whenever you go into your water to rinse your brush, like this, you're going to want to stop first at your sponge and tap off a little water, and then go in and grab some paint or rinse off your brush, dry off a little, take off a little bit of water, and then you can go in and do some corrections or add some more water to a wash. But always know that you're going to want to sort of think about taking some water off your brush when you're working, because a lot of times when artists go into their water pail, they forget to take a little water off there, and then all of a sudden floods start happening in their palette, and then they get really unpleasant looking water spots on their watercolor paintings. So if you always remember to rinse your brush, tap a little bit of water off on your sponge, and then you go in and do whatever you're going to do, and from there you're good. Okay, so we have that. And then I just have normal paper here. I'm actually using some Fabriano student paper right here. So I just have it, I have it taped down to my table. Simple enough, right? You can use any old pencil too when we're going to do our sketching. You can use an office pencil like this, or you can buy those retractable, nice like architect and engineers pencils. I use those all the time. I really enjoy those. I don't have one handy right now. Oh yeah, I do. Here's one. So this is a nice retractable pencil, and this what's great about this is you don't have to keep sharpening it. You just click the top of the pen like this, and you keep getting fresh, brand new lead out of your tip of your pencil. So you can just keep drawing and drawing and drawing. When it runs out, you just click a couple times, and you have more lead coming out of the tip of your pencil, which is great, very handy, very economical, and also saves on time instead of stopping and having to sharpen your pencil and whatever. Let's use this instead for our drawing. And then what else do we have? We have our paper taped down to our working surface here. I have a table. I'm working on just a flat table with a little bit of a pitch on it, maybe about a 2x4 thickness, or a roll of tape thickness like this underneath the top of the board. So if you take a roll of tape like this, about 1.5 inch piece of tape, and you put it underneath your board, or your maybe you have like a sketchbook, you just put a little bit of pitch on it by putting this underneath the top of your board, like up here underneath, and then your board will have a little bit of pitch like this, just a little bit. It's better to have your board pitched a little bit back towards yourself, so that when you're painting, the water will flow a little bit down this way, just a tiny bit. And then what else do we have? We have a mat. What I always suggest if you're painting in watercolors is try grabbing yourself at the online or in your local hobby stores, or your artist stores, art supply stores. You could buy pre-cut mats that come in predetermined sizes that fit in all standard frames. So when you go out and want to frame one of your paintings, this dimension is going to fit your painting, and it'll also fit in a frame if you want to frame your paintings and sell them or give them as gifts and so forth. So here you have a standard size mat cut to size. It's already, you buy these in the store or online, pre-cut mats they're called, and you just set it down on your paper, and then what you do is you just rest it down, and then you put a very light pencil line around this. And what that does is, when you're going to draw and paint now, you're absolutely going to, at minimum, make sure you have enough paint and drawing and painting to cover this area and a little more, so that when you take your painting and you're done, you just take your mat and you drop it over your painting. What happens is, if we don't put these mats on first and draw out a line like this, a square, a rectangle, we do our painting and we kind of maybe just do it however we want. Next thing you know, when you go to put a mat over it, it doesn't fit. And the next thing you know, you're shrinking down your painting a little bit too much. So if it makes sense, we just want to have our determined size starting out right from the beginning, to know this is the rectangle we have to fill up at least with our painting, but we're going to go a little larger than this. So we take that original traced rectangle, and then we just make a line around 1 inch more around the whole exterior of this. And then what I do is I take a ruler, and I just take a ruler really simply, and it doesn't have to be perfect, and I just go a little bit larger like this, about 1 inch, or 3/4 to 1 inch around, larger, like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I paint out to that outer pencil line. That means I'm definitely have enough painting so that when I drop my mat on there, it's going to be perfect. I can move it around a little bit, adjust it a little bit, and then we have a perfect painting that fits within our mat, and then we can go out and just get a frame for it if we want. So that's really how I set everything up when I first start. This is the ultimate way to set up your painting right from the start. Your gear, especially if you're just beginning, or if maybe you're just painting maybe like 6 months or 3 months, you're just getting started, don't worry about buying all those fancy gear and all that in the beginning. Just get your first simple setup here. Start working with this, and then maybe if you say, wow, after 6 months or a year, you really love it, well, then you start going out and you purchase some other really fancy stuff like tube paints. You can go and grab, you can go to the art store or online, and you can start purchasing some really nice tube paints, like these, and you get a little fancier palette. You maybe get like a nice aluminum palette. Maybe a small like outdoor palette that you can go out with, maybe when you go on vacation, or if you go on weekend jaunts and you want to go out and do some sightseeing, you bring your palette, a small little palette with you, and a little small sketchbook, and you can do some painting and drawing outside, maybe for 10, 20 minutes you can do quick little paintings. Oh, I love doing that. That's so much fun. Going on vacation or on a little weekend getaway, you bring a small little palette and a small sketchbook, and you just do a couple little small renderings of like places you're going to see and things. So much fun. So once you're doing watercolor, you're really going to just have so much fun because you're going to bring it with you when you go on vacations and weekend getaways, or if you travel a little bit, you can bring it, on business trips, or if you go to your family's house on weekends or friends, you can bring your small little setup, eventually. You can also bring this too. It's very light, so you can bring something like this with you when you travel or anything like that too as well, because it's perfect. It's nice and light, and there's no mess or anything. You just spritz it with some water, paint, and when it's done, it dries pretty quick within 10, 15, 20 minutes, and you can just close it up, or you can close it up at any time as long as you wipe up any heavy, moisture or anything like that, or puddles in your palette. So you'd want to do that first, mop up some of the puddles with a paper towel or a tissue first, and you close up your palette, and then you can just throw it in a backpack or whatever. Okay, so this is the perfect setup. Let's continue on. Let's just made a little mess there. Let's practice this now. What happens when you're painting and you lean into your paints and all of a sudden you make a smudge on your painting like this, your brand new paper? You were just going to start with this, and look what happens. Well, it might work out that this little smudge might be in the middle of an area that you're going to paint over and you won't see it, but let's try to fix this quick. So the first thing I would do is I would make sure I have absolutely clean, fresh, clean water like this. And then I would dip in a sponge, paper towel like this, squeeze out some of the water, and then just sort of blot at it a little bit and kind of just see what happens. Blot at it with a little bit of water, and then take your dry part of your paper towel and go over that. And look, it's all fixed, no problem. See, that's with watercolor. It usually cleans up real easy like this. If you have a little smudge or something, you just tap a little bit of clean, crystal clear water on there. Tap a little bit of that on there with a paper towel, tissue. And then what you do is you just take the dry part of the paper towel once you wet it, and then you just lift it up, blot it a little bit, and it cleans right up. See how we did that? Perfect. No problem. See how fun watercolor is? Okay, let's get started with our drawing. And again, this is going to be a really fun landscape painting. And I covered a lot of stuff right in the beginning because I want this video to be sort of like a beginner's guide to a landscape painting and all the little incidental things you have to kind of know about when you first start. Because some of you might be watching for the first time, and if you are, welcome, and thanks so much for coming by. So let's get started in just a second with our drawing and painting, okay? And then we'll just see how things keep progressing, okay? Be right back. All right, we're back and we're having fun again. We're just going over all the steps that we need to do to keep progressing through this landscape painting, this beautiful landscape painting with a lake and mountains and trees and rocks and foreground and beautiful sky. We're going to have a great time. Let's keep going here. So one more thing I wanted to do is take some artist tape and just tape along the edge of this pencil line we made, that outer pencil line we made. Remember, we started out with our pre-cut mat that we bought online or in an art store, so that we make the painting at least this big, but a little bit bigger than this opening of the mat here, this window of this mat. So this way, when we're done with the painting, we can put this right over the top. Perfect. Go out, we pick out a frame, which is the pre-cut size here of this perfect mat size, and we'll put a frame, and that's it. You don't even have to worry about anything customizing, just basically plug and play. So then we got our pencil line for our window of our mat. Then we went a little bit larger so that we make the painting a little bit larger, about an inch all the way around larger. So we have a little bit of wiggle room to slide the painting, to slide the mat around on it and find that perfect spot with the mat once we're done. But for the most part, we're very precise here with how we're going to start out our painting so that we don't have issues later. Why create a beautiful painting that comes out really fantastic, right? And all of a sudden, you know, you can't even put a mat on it and put it in a frame. If you have a good painting that comes out really well, put a mat on it and put it in a frame. And if you buy the different pre-cut size mats, you can pick up, you know, a number of mats that fit your size you like to work in. So obviously there's all sizes of mats. I'm going to pick out a few more here. So if you like to work a little smaller, there's other pre-cut. Again, you use this pre-cut smaller mat. Here's some really small, like a smaller mat for if you're going to do some real small compositions, some beautiful little small paintings. Maybe if you're outdoors and doing some outdoor compositions and things like that. So, but if you buy these, just a few, maybe, you know, one of every size, and you just keep them with you when you're setting up your paintings, you'll always have your pre-cut sizes, which are perfect size, so you can go out and just pick out a frame quick at the local hobby shop or art frame store, and it'll be all good to go. Okay, so don't mind me while I put my mats back underneath my art table. We have our tape on there. Let's get started with our painting, our layout. So I'm thinking the first thing I'll do is I want to go about halfway with my waterline for our lake. So you did see the finished painting to start with. And what I did is I'm improvising right now. I really don't have a painting I'm working from. I'm just kind of working from my own. I'm just recalling back to when I painted the painting. Similar to this. So I want to just kind of make sure. The first thing I do is I get my line for my distant horizon for my lake. So now when I do that, I can really help myself tremendously by taking a ruler and just measuring up and saying, where's the halfway point? 8 inches approximately. Well, 4 inches is half of 8. So that's my halfway point. And then I just take it over here and do the same thing. 4 inches. Then I drop my ruler over here. Easier way to do it is just measure from the bottom and say what's that first line that I drew? How high is that? 4.5. So I just go over here and go 4.5. Make my mark there. 4.5. Then I drop my ruler on top and I make a line across like that. That's my lake. The water in my lake right about there. Now we have that first part of our painting done, our design, halfway point, hash marks. We have the halfway point. Then from there, we're going to look down here and say, okay, well, we're going to make some foreground here. Maybe we'll go up about a little bit, maybe about 1/4 of a way. So if we made this 1/2 and 1/4 and 1/4, so maybe halfway is there, 1/4 is here, and 1/4 is here. Maybe we go up about 1/4. Let's try that again. I'm not so sure I'm going to be happy with this right now. Let me take this and just make it more simple. I'm going to make my halfway point 3/4 and 3/4. 1/4, 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4 equals a whole. So this whole section right here is one whole, and then we break it down into quarters, or if you're looking at metric, you know, centimeters and millimeters. So you would just divide this into 4 sections, equal sections with your centimeters and millimeters measurements. So here's my halfway point. So this quarterway point, or 0.3 or 0.25, I guess, for metric. That would be my first point where I want to start creating a little bit of a foreground here with some land and a little bit of twigs and branches and trees over here. So this will be our foreground. Then we're going to go up here a little more, and then we're going to say, well, about 3/4 of the way up here, let's draw a little bit of land there, and then maybe over here we're going to have maybe a little bit of land sticking out. Maybe it's like a little bit of a peninsula here. So we have this going this way. Let's keep this kind of line going this way here. So let's keep these lines going the same direction here, like that. Like that. And then we're going to have some trees over here. So let's make these trees over here, like so. So we're not going to really, we're just going to draw some trees over here. So we'll make some tree shapes with our pencil, but nothing too fancy right now. We're just trying to get a general idea of where everything's going to go. Then here's the very, very edge of the lake where that we can see. And then over there, we're going to have a little bit of some mountains in the background here. And maybe they go across about 3/4 over here. So now if we get a vertical scale, so let's do the same thing up here. Now you're working with inches or centimeters, millimeters, inches, so forth. You just want to go across the top and say how big is the painting up top here? Well, we have about 11 inches. So 5.5 inches is halfway. 5.5 plus 5.5 inches equals 11 inches. So this is our center line here. So if we're looking at the center line in the painting like this, then we're going to say, well, let's make this mountain here in the distance, let it go past the halfway point a little bit, and then just kind of drop it down into the water like that. And then another little small bit of mountain there. And then across here, some more mountains like that in the very, very distance. And there you have it. You have your foreground, your middle distance outcropping here a little bit of a peninsula of some sand and dirt and rocks and grass and some trees over here too. And then in the distance, you have your distant mountains here, and they kind of slope down toward the bottom of the lake where the lake meets the mountains. And then you'll see some even further distant mountains in the far distance in your painting along that center line of your painting, which is the horizon line of the lake. So that's really a big portion of this painting, getting these, maybe these first landmarks you want to have kind of put in here. And then you just have a couple more rocks over here, maybe a little bit there. And then we're going to do maybe another couple trees over here. So maybe we're going to do, halfway, 3/4, 5/8. So then maybe we do another, we'll do a tree over here like this, just going up out of the picture, a tree here. And we always see these great artists that we watch all the time, they're always putting these big trees in the foreground, right out through the painting like this. Kind of gives it really a beautiful depth and three-dimensional feeling of your painting when you add in some foreground trees like this. So that's all we're doing. We're just adding some trees here in the foreground. And we'll just put some branches like this. And we'll work out some branches a little bit later when we're painting with our brush, but just so you kind of see what we have here. This is the composition, really, in its simplest form. We put the halfway point right down the center, and then we worked in here and got our first quarter of the way up was our bit of foreground land mass here. Then there's water over here, and then there's another land mass over here at about 3/4 of the way up to this first halfway point. And then at the halfway point, we have our perfectly level line going across for our lake. So we want that lake water to be perfectly level across the painting, and that's why we use the ruler and trace that line, because we don't want to have a lake that's tipping like this or like this. That would look silly and really unpleasant looking. Let's have a nice level line for our lake. And then here, we have this middle distance outcropping of trees and things like that. And then again, the distant mountains. We made sure that we have the distant mountains here along the top of the lake. And then what we're going to do is we're going to make sure we leave white paper underneath our mountains so that we can see that line. So draw a little extra pencil line under there, just to remind you not to go too dark along the bottom of your mountains. So leave that little stripe of white paper there that we saw in the beginning of the video. Remember how we saw that in the beginning of the video? That little bit of white line across. We'll talk about that as we go through the painting when we're painting, but let's look at this. Look how good this looks. It's fine. We have some more tree branches and things we'll put here just to remind us we want to put some of those in. Some like that. You know, a few over here. Okay, perfect. This is all you need now. Once you have this drawing done, you're all set. You're ready to paint. So let's take a break. Again, when you're doing a lot of work, it always really helps if you can just kind of take a quick break for 5-10 minutes at most, and then you come back and you start working again. But usually when you come back after a quick break, you might notice something or one or two things you said, oh my gosh, I forgot I'm supposed to do this or that, or oh, I see this doesn't look so good. I better draw this line over again, or these few lines over again. You don't want to go too much with changing things, but just look at it quick when you come back from a break. You might see something that you missed. And then once you're done, then you're ready to start painting. So let's take another quick break and we'll start painting, okay? Be right back. Okay, so now we're going to get started with our painting, the most fun part of all. We have our pencil work done. Now when I'm coming back from my break, I realized I put my tree trunks on the very, very top of this bit of this foreground land cropping here. But I realized these tree trunks would go right down into the land mass here like this. So it would be really close to the bottom of the painting. Can you see how I adjusted that? So that's what I mean when we're coming back after taking a break. I right away saw that because I had a fresh mind, relaxed mind, and I said, wow, look at that. I missed that when I was drawing it on the first part of my sketching. So now I realize, yeah, I've got to bring these tree trunks down all the way into the landmass here and not leave them like on top of this. That would look kind of silly if the tree trunks were sitting right on top of this landmass here. So that looks much better, right? When I bring that back, when I bring that down this way. Okay, so that's all. We see these things when we come back from a break. We go, oh, I noticed that. It doesn't look the way it should. And then we make an adjustment and a counter adjustment like that. All right, so there we go. We made our adjustments that we needed to. Now the next consideration we have as well, let's look at this painting from a perspective of we're better off probably using the glazing technique in this painting. And what I mean by the glazing technique, and you know, if you're a beginner and you've never even worked on my channel before and this is the first time you're here, you're going to let me explain it quickly. The glazing technique is really, in watercolor, most watercolor artists do use the glazing technique, most. Professional and even novice or beginner watercolor artists do use the glazing technique. What that is we take the water and the paint to start with, and we cover the whole paper, or pretty much, let's say 75% to 90% to 100% of the paper we cover with a really light wash of paint, very, very light. So let me take a quick example here. So your first wash in a glazing technique, let's just say, it's going to be like light washes like this. See how that's kind of really light paint? Like that. So your first washes on the glazing technique, your first wash, your initial wash over your whole paper is going to be very, very light like this, right? So that's the key to glazing technique. First wash that you do across the whole paper is a really light wash like this, mostly water and just a little bit of paint. Then when that dries 100% or 90%, but pretty much 100%, you should really, in the beginning, try using the discipline of when you do the glazing technique, your first wash, you get it on, let it dry 100% complete. Do not go on there when it's damp, a little bit wet. No, 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 no. Let it dry 100%, and then you go in and you do your darker washes over the top. So that would be something like this. Then you go over with your darker washes on top. So if you're doing some trees like this or something like that, then you're going over with your darker wash on top. And that's the glazing technique. First light wash, let it dry 100%. Then you come back over and you start doing your darker washes, your trees. Maybe you have a cabin over here or something like that. You know, you do a cabin over here. So you have a cabin like this. maybe, and then you get some even darker colors like that, and you put like a door in there and a couple windows and a little bit of, things like this, maybe a little bit of details on the cabin like this. But that's basically the idea of the glazing technique. Light wash first, darker on top, and that's what we're going to do here. Now, if you were to do the alla prima method, you'll have to tune into the next video or two. You'll probably eventually see me do the alla prima method. The alla prima method is you would start with your darks first here, and then you put your lights like this last. And that's all it is. It's just the glazing technique in reverse. That's all you have to remember on that. So don't worry about it. We're doing the glazing technique here anyway, so let's focus on that. So now I'm going to say to myself, what washes and colors are we going to use on this painting? It's a landscape. We want to make it a little bit of a, maybe like a little bit of a hazy day. Maybe it's like in the afternoon or like in the midday, maybe around lunchtime or late morning or early afternoon. It's kind of going to be hazy out. So we don't want really super bright colors. Let's keep things a little bit subdued. So now I'm looking at this size brush right here for this painting, and I'm saying this is like a 8 by 10 approximately. 11 by 8 by 11 or 8 by 10 approximately. So for this, I'm thinking I need a little bit of a larger square brush. So this one here is the Princeton Art and Brush Company 1 inch wash brush, flat brush. This one here we can use 2, but let's get a larger brush like this to get this size painting done more effectively. So you got to remember, the larger your painting, the bigger your brushes you have to use. You can't create a large painting like this trying to paint with just this one brush. It will not work. I can tell you that right now. So remember, the larger the painting, the bigger the brush. So for this painting, we're going to need this size brush for the first preliminary washes on this. So I'm going to wet this brush now, and I'm going to start mixing my sky color. Let's do it right here, sky color. Okay, so we're using the blue here. And you have to remember, if you're using the Prang Oval 16 set, I have my colors set up different than what it comes stock. So you'll have to go to my YouTube videos and type in Chris Petri Prang palette, Prang Oval 16 palette, or beginner's palette. Just type in Chris Petri beginner's palettes or Chris Petri Prang palette. And then you'll see I have many videos on palettes. You want to find the video where I explain how I set this up. My Prang setup here, which is all warm on this side and then cool on this side of colors. So you have to do that first to make it easier for yourself. Because if you have your palette set up the same way I have it here, then when you're painting and trying to do this video at home and you're working with me, along with me, you're automatically going to have a lot easier time because you're going to kind of start to get the feel of where I'm going with my brush and the colors and where I'm mixing. So I'm using a little bit of orange and blue and brown to get myself a nice blue with a little bit of that gray down feel, like that. Then I'm going to mix a little more water into it, and we're going to start getting that on the paper. But before I do that, I want to wet the paper with fresh, clean water. So let's do that. I'm going to add a little bit of fresh, clean water right across the whole paper here, just to pre-wet the paper. Pre-wet your paper on this one, on this painting. Just take the watercolor. The water is just the water, nothing else. Just water, fresh, clean water, and just do a light wash of damp water across the whole page, like that, and then just kind of blend it in, and that's all you have to do. Just like that, the whole page. And then if you have to let it soak in a little bit, you can do that. Let it soak in a little bit for a minute. Let's wait a minute or two, just to let that first bit of fresh, clean water across the whole page. I wet the whole paper. There we go. Now we're going to let this set up for a second or two. And it should only maybe a minute, let's say 30 to 60 seconds, and this should be fine. And then we can start putting our washes on. Okay, I think that's about good. That's been about 30 seconds. Let's try it out. I think it'll be fine. And let's just do that. Let's look fine. Looks good. A little bit of more, let's do a little more blue in there for the top. Okay, I'm going to do a little darker blue up there. Then I rinse my brush off, dry off a little bit of that water off the brush on the sponge, and then I just work that light blue down in there like that. Isn't that easy? There's nothing easier than that. Your first glazing is always your easiest. And then let's add a little bit of green and a little bit of that blue and green. I just want to mix in a little bit of that green too. And while I'm doing that, a little bit of orange. Orange along the horizon line here. Just a touch of it though. Don't put too much orange in there, just a tiny bit. Just like that. Work a little bit of orange in here along this water area. And then your brown and your blue for that grayish blue color. And maybe a little more brown over here. So, you know, you can add a little bit of brown and blue over here. But you're going to work the rest of your washes once this is dry. So this is your first wash. Not a big deal. Just like that. Looks good. Okay. Now this is the fun part. You can take a break for like 2 hours, or if you have a blow dryer, you can take a blow dryer and spend about maybe 3, 4, 5 minutes blow drying this nice and easy until it dries off 100%. So that's up to you. I leave that up to you whether you want to use a blow dryer and keep going, or if you have to do some chores or some other things and you want to come back a couple hours later or the next day, you can let this dry overnight. That's what's fun about watercolor. You can stop anywhere you want with watercolor and pick up the next day, the next week. You could do this first glazing like this and let it sit 2 weeks and then come back in 2 weeks and start painting again. Or you can use a blow dryer and start back up in 5 minutes, or you can let it dry for a couple hours and come back. So that's the fun about watercolor. It's very versatile. It's really fun to work with. Watercolor is really a medium where you really have a lot of flexibility with it. You really do. And you can, again, you can take it with you wherever you go. It's not a mess. Most times your watercolors are never going to make any messes on your furniture and things like that, or your clothes. It comes out in the wash 90% of the time. As long as you're careful with it a little bit and just treat it respectfully, it'll treat you great in watercolor. You know what I mean? If you're working with oils, that's a whole different story. You're talking about major problems with furniture and clothing and stuff like that. If you're an oil painter, I really salute you. I do work in oils occasionally. I'm starting to work with oils a little bit, but I already know it's caused me some headaches with my clothes and furniture and things like that. So that's why I love watercolor. It's a lot more easygoing. Okay? All right, so now we've got our first wash on, and you know the rest. You either blow dry it quickly, or you have to let it dry at least like an hour or two, or you can let it go overnight or many days, and that doesn't matter either. Once you're past that point of a couple hours, you're okay. Okay, let's come back. I'm going to use the blow dryer and keep going here. Okay, let's keep this going, all right? Okay, we'll be right back. All right, we are back, and we are getting started again here. So what I thought I would do is, I mentioned a little bit earlier about brush sizes. Now this one here, this brush is a round brush. It's Princeton Neptune, number 8 round brush, Princeton Neptune. This is a synthetic round brush, and it's of a good size that it's going to be a little bit easier to paint some of these larger trees and these mountains and foreground with this. This is a little bit small. We're going to use this. This is the stock brush that comes with the Prang Oval 16. This will be good for some details that we're going to do. But for these larger washes now, as we start up on our second glazing, using the glazing technique, doing our second glazing, we need a good, like a decent, halfway decent size round brush here to start getting in some of these larger trees and mountain areas and foregrounds. So let's use this number 8 round brush. It's by Princeton Neptune. You can find any round brush you need to, synthetic, watercolor brush online or in the art stores and so forth. But it just has to be a little bit larger, maybe, you know, about twice as large as the brush that comes with the Prang Oval 16 set. And let's start out. Now, since we're doing our second glazing, all these washes are going to be darker. And what I think I will do is, I think I'm going to start in the distance and then work this way. So if I'm doing that, actually, I will be able to start with maybe a medium-sized brush like this Prang brush that comes with the Prang set here. So let's do that. So the thing I want to do is I want to take some blue and some brown and some green here. So I'm going to make some blue, brown, and green like this. Maybe a little bit of purple. Tap off a little bit of the water on the sponge. The paint and water on the sponge, and let's start getting our distant mountains over here done. Okay, and then I rinse off the brush. Maybe I go with a little bit of a alternate, you know, change up of color a little bit. Maybe some green, brown, a little bit of this in there too. Maybe a change in the blue a little bit. Let's do that. Maybe like a greenish blue. Let's do that. We'll get that here. You can go right across the tree. That won't be a problem. Like that. And then if you want, sometimes it's good just to maybe lift up a little bit of paint with a tissue. So I usually roll up a little bit of a tissue. And I lift up a couple spots just to make it a little lighter in a couple areas when I'm going across this distance here. Like that. And let's get a little bit of maybe red in there too. And some brown. And there's the tree over here too. So you can paint a little bit through that tree. That won't make a big difference at all. And then we'll pick up some of that other wash there. So now we're doing those distant mountains. You can just see I'm picking up the paint. I'm painting right on that line that we created earlier, which was the halfway point. We'll take a little bit of that, a little bit of the red. And again, if you can change your colors a little bit here and there, that's going to look better. And then here, right away, we're going to notice that there's going to be some trees over here. And this one might be a little bit smaller, like this, like that. Maybe a little bit of green. We'll start mixing some greens up here. So again, have fun, mix your colors up as you go, or pre-mix them. Maybe you pre-mix your colors. You know, maybe you pre-mix your colors a little bit. Like that. So I'm just making some kind of little scribbly lines for the trees. Like that. And then let's get our larger brush now because we have more area we have to cover. So let's use this larger brush and we're going to do the same thing. Just come in here and get some of these washes. I'll splash a little bit maybe here. And these brushes, these trees come down into this area here a little bit, I think. And a little bit of green. A little bit of green there, a little bit of green, a little bit of blue and purple. More blue, purple, brown. So you mix up your colors a little bit, but you want to make them dark here. For sure, you want to have dark colors because you're doing your second glazing now. And I hope you'll understand that since we did that really light wash first, these next washes, this second wash or this second glazing, these are going to be darker. You want to have darker washes in here. Less water, more paint. And I hope you'll have fun with that idea. And then I'm going to put some yellow down here so we can have some more lively looking greens in there too. And then maybe down here too, we'll use some of those lighter greens here, maybe. Maybe a little bit of orange and yellow. And I'll put them a little bit here and there, some of those yellowish. So I'm using like this lemony yellow and some orange. And we'll put some of that lemony yellow orange here and there as we work our darker darks in here. And then here we have some more of the blues and browns. And then I'll do some of these kind of, okay, so we have a pine tree looking thing here. Pine trees tend to have that look like this. And then we have some of the other, so I'll splash a little bit over here. Sometimes splashing and finger painting works too. Do a little bit of your finger painting and like that. Like this, just to kind of fill in some areas. Leave some white paper behind there. So you want to leave some white paper in here behind these trees. Like that. And then maybe we'll go with a little bit of a darker wash here. Blue, purple, brown, green. Blue, purple, brown, and green. A little bit of splashing just to have a little bit of a dark over here. And there's a little bit of water over here, like this. Then we're going to work on some of the orangey and brown sand color, like this. And let's do some of that. We're going to have some orange and brown sand color. And we're just going to follow those pencil lines that we drew before. Remember how we drew those pencil lines before? And you can do a couple scratch ups with your nail here for a couple weeds and things like that. And as you go. And then we'll do that. We'll have a little bit of a cove in here. So we'll do a little bit of a cove over here. Like that. And this is over here like so. That. So we'll have a little bit of a cove over here of dark colors like that. And then let's do a little shadowing here. So now this is the fun part. These are the trees up here. So those are a little bit of shadows here in the water. And you can take those dark colors and you want to put a little bit of a shadow under the like that along this shoreline here, this little alcove and peninsula here and there. And you got a rock over here maybe. Some more rocks over here, maybe out over this way over here. Like that. Another couple little rocks out there. Okay. And a little bit of water over here. Some lighter wash there, maybe. And always remember, along your sides of your painting, it's not that much important, because like that's the edges of your painting. So when you have the edges of your painting, when you're painting any painting really, for the most part, I mean, I'm not saying it's every single time you use the same methods or ideas, but you can use as a kind of a rule of thumb, or, use as a guide for yourself, that when you're doing a painting, you can usually blend in the edges on the sides of your painting, and you don't want to have too much exciting things going along the edge of the painting. You kind of want to blend that edge of your painting out over here, and most of your exciting stuff's going to kind of happen in the center of your painting, or, generally in the middle areas of your painting where you want the viewer to look. You want your viewer to kind of look in the center of your painting for the most part, and look around it too at times, but we don't want to make any big productions on the sides of our painting, really, is what I'm saying. So we kind of saw that we added that little bit of... Now I'm going to change the water. I need fresh, clean water. So I get my water container, just pour fresh, clean water in there. And what I want to do is make sure I get fresh, clean water. Maybe a little bit of this here, that orangey brown. And I sort of want to blend that in like that. And blend that out like this. See how I did that? Just kind of blend that in a little bit like this. Like that. That's all I needed to do there. And then also two, brown, blue, green, purple. There's also that tree over here. So that's where I want to kind of do the tree reflections. So I'm just going to go with a little bit of a darker wash there. Like that. Okay, I'm pretty much happy with that area. The water over here, there's a little bit of an alcove of water over here. Like that. And I think we're really in great shape right now. We're actually kind of finished with the right-hand side of our painting. For the most part, we do have to put a little bit of wash down here, but we want to wait till this dries before we start filling in this foreground. So let's leave the foreground till last. But right now, again, is another time which is a perfect time for a break. I might do a little bit of like this. I might just do a little bit of touch-ups there along the shoreline. Like that. But right now, I think we're really looking good. And again, I didn't mind painting through the trees because these trees are going to be really dark. So when we paint these tree trunks, we're going to go right over the top of those mountains right here. And like that. Dark. We're going to have a dark tree trunk here. And right through here too. Now when we do that, you're not even going to worry about the mountains in the distance because that's going to be covered over by your dark tree trunks here, like this, okay? So you don't have to worry about that. That's why I painted through there and didn't really worry about that too much, because it is going to be a dark tree trunk here and here, so you don't have to worry about being too fussy along the trees here. And I think this is good. I'm going to do a couple thumb scratches here. A couple of those two verticals, a couple of vertical lines, so you can get a couple of those interesting light white ups or light scratch marks in your painting to kind of give a little bit of feeling of highlights in there. And I think we're good right now. So let's let this dry. We'll take a break. We've been working, 15 minutes, 10, 15 minutes already. Good time to take a break. We'll come back and we'll start working on the tree trunks here and the trees, and we'll finish up with our foreground, and we'll have a completed, beautiful, gorgeous landscape painting here, okay? So let's not delay. Let's take a break, get a little bit of rest and relaxation for 5-10 minutes, and then we'll come back and we'll be ready to continue on, okay? All right, we'll be right back. Okay, we are back in business again. We are actually, I think we're about halfway through the painting or a little more than halfway, so you are really in great shape right now. So as you can see, we really had, I'm just going to kind of recap a little bit of what we've been doing so far, just in case you took a break and you're coming back after maybe a day of a break and you're picking up again. I know some of you probably do that. You maybe watch half of the video, complete half of the painting, and then you come back a couple of days later or a week later and you pick back up again, and that's fine too. You can, with watercolor, that's the great thing about watercolor too, and oil painting, and I mentioned oil painting and acrylic painting, basically oil painting, acrylic painting, watercolor painting, whatever you're doing, whatever medium you work in, you can usually stop and go in all those mediums pretty much for the most part. Especially if you've learned about, all the techniques of the medium, usually you can figure out a way to break up your time with maybe starting and stopping your paintings. But this one, is very much a painting you can do in like 2 hours or 2 or 3 hours, maybe 2 hours. I hope you'll work quickly though. This is the kind of painting you saw me. I kind of have been moving pretty fast. That first wash goes on real fast. And then our darker second wash here, second glazing, which we're just continuing on with our second dark washes, our second glazing. And, you can kind of see it's working its way really nicely. We took a break now. We did a lot of work over here and in this distant mountain range and some rocks over here. Now we're just going to basically kind of finish up, I think, with the trees and the tree trunks and the trees and the foreground. And I think we'll have it all completed. So this is really a fun painting. It doesn't take too much time. You can, have about a 2 to 3 hour session of painting, and you'll have it all completed. If you work a little quicker, maybe an hour and a half, if you can work along really quickly with what we're doing. But here we're going to again go back in. We're going to get our medium-sized round brush. And again, we said that this one's a little bit small to do the majority of the tasks here. You probably can get away with using this one now for these trees, but it's still, this one you can kind of see kind of matches up nicely with the size of the trunk of the trees. So we'll use this one, and then we'll do some tree branches with this. So let's start out. We'll mix up some painting for the tree trunks, and again, it's going to be brown and blue like we've been working with, so you can use some of this mix you have left from that. Maybe a little bit of orange too. And we'll use some blue as well and purple to get some of the shadow colors, the darker colors, and mix some brown into that too to brown that down a little bit. So let's get started over here. So I'm pretty much thinking that the light is pretty much, I think, straight up overhead coming down into the painting. So we're not really too much worried about shadows that much and light and things like that. But it seems like maybe the light's coming a little bit from this direction, a touch. So we can make the darker portion of our tree trunks over here on the right side. And we'll just go right up top like this. A couple of these. And I'm just using the brush with the very, very tip of the brush. And wow, you can see how we really got out of control here a little bit by just dropping the brush. And again, this is where you learn how to clean up a little bit of mistakes and problems that happen if you drop your brush like I just did. No need to really panic at all. You just grab some tissue or some, most likely better off paper towel, dip it in some clean, fresh water, and just blot a little bit. And once you blot the area that you dropped the paint on, then you just sort of blot it up like that. And there we go. That fixes that. And then over here, same thing. Fresh, clean water. Blot it onto the paper, fresh, clean water. And then blot up. And there you go. It's fixed. So sometimes if I'm talking too much on my videos, you'll see me do something like that. And then we'll go over here with some of that orangey brown. It's a little bit more light over here on the left side, so you'll see some more of that orangey brown kind of wash. Looks good. Like that, you can make a couple branches, kind of broken branches, and Okay, and then we'll come over here and do the same thing, get a darker dark for the right side of the, and I'm just using basically my hand. I'm resting my pinky on the paper, but because it's a little damp over here, so I usually rest my pinky on the paper and try to keep my hand above the paper with my pinky, and then use the brush like this and just kind of, you got to practice that a little bit. Trust me, it takes time. I did not learn how to use my brush like this overnight. It takes years to practice this type of technique, but you can get it in a lot less than years. It can take, maybe if you practice a little bit here and there every day or every couple days, you probably will pick it up in like a couple months, really. So it's just a matter of resting your pinky on the paper and then keeping your brush on the paper at the same time. So pinky down on the brush, on the paper, pinky on the paper, and then the brush on the paper at the same time. And you do your brush stroke like that. And there you go. And that helps a lot so that you don't lean into your paint too much. So that's a good technique to learn if you can try using that technique a little bit. Okay, and then I'm going to use that same technique again here and just get a little more of that reddish brown on the, like that. Some more branches out here like this, and I think that should be fine. Maybe we'll do a branch out here, a thicker branch there. Like that. And if you do some really good thick trunks and branches like this and leave it real simple, you're all set. That's fine. That's all you need. You don't have to get too fancy. Like this. And once this dries, we'll put some wash over top for the leaves. So that'll be fun. We'll do that real quick. That's going to be quick and easy. Now, let's do the foreground here. And what we're going to want to do is for this foreground here, we're going to repeat these colors over here. So chances are you're going to have most of these colors mixed already over here. So let's get some green over here, brown, blue, and purple. And that's pretty much some of your darks there. You might not need that much darks. Rinse the brush, dry it off on the sponge a little bit, the brush. You're going to need some of these golden browns, which is fine. You'll have that already there, ready to go. And then maybe some, let's clean up one spot. Okay, so I use some paper towel, and I want to clean up one of these wells here. So if you can, when you're working and you need to mix fresh new color, clean up a couple wells like that, just so you have a couple extra spaces to work in with some new fresh color. So I know I want to put some purple in this one here. And then up here, some yellow. Yellow. I think some yellow will look good. Some orange. Like that. Yeah, so I think that's a pretty good... some pretty good range of color that we've already used over here. Okay, so let's start working these colors. Put some of those in. Okay, over here we've got some more of that. And I'm just going to try to mix it up. Mix up the colors. I don't want any really bright, exciting colors on the edge over here. I want to keep that kind of dull over there. And then if anything, I want my bright, exciting colors over here in the center. Like this. If that makes sense. Again, we're trying to keep our attention in the middle of the painting, for the most part. So we'll put some of those more exciting. And I always try to keep my watercolor paint washes along the tape all solid. Like I wouldn't want any white paper showing through on the bottom where my edge is right there. Up here is okay for some white paper edges. That's fine. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with this. And then we put in some more shadows here and there. Maybe a shadow in there and a shadow over here, coming straight down. Maybe I blot up a little bit of light on both sides like that, like there. This way we have some shadow for that tree. And this tree over here, some shadows coming down this way. And some purple. So I just like to mix in a little bit of the purple in there to mix the kind of that cool purplish shadowy look. And then maybe some more of the yellow and orange, just to have a little bit of color mixture. And I think that's fine. Now, you could do a couple scratch ups over here. Just a few, maybe just a couple of scratch ups over here. And then we're going to do a few more details with some twigs and branches and things over here, but I think for the most part this does look pretty good. Like this, like that. And as you can see, it's coming along beautifully. Now this is the point where this is drying down here, but you can still work up here in this section because this is all dry. You can kind of see if I rub my hand across this. This is all dry now. So that's perfect. We can do some washes up here. Let's go back to our, maybe we're going to go with a medium size square brush, flat brush. And let's do some green, like this, with some orange and some yellow. Okay, and then we're just going to do some washes on this. Mix in some water. We're just going to do some leaves and things like that. Just scrub them on. And just remember, you want to leave some clear paper, some sky showing through. You don't want to cover the whole area, right? So there we go. We have some green wash on there. Then you can take a little bit of darker wash and kind of put some of this darker wash in there just to change it up a little, like that. I would also take a little bit of splashing. Do a couple splashes like that. Then we're going to do over here. In this one here, we might leave it a little more, we'll use some more green up here too. Maybe we'll take some brown, green, brown, blue, purple, green, brown, blue, and purple. And I'm just taking my flat brush and scrubbing it around like this in circular motions. Like that. Pick up a little more, splash a couple splashes. There we go. And there you have your trees over on this side. Don't do too much. Make sure you're leaving lots of space in between the leaves so that you see the sky. See how much sky wash I've left in here? I haven't covered it all over, right? You have some sky wash here, 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 over there, over here, over here, if you here, over here, over here. So you see I left a lot of sky wash showing through. I didn't cover the whole area with the leaves. I took the leaves and just carefully scrubbed on circular motions with my flat brush here and there. Some washes of green and blue and orange. So that's the key. If you can leave a lot of light showing through, you're going to be looking really good. Okay? Now at this point, all we have left is we're going to change our water. We'll get some fresh, clean water here because we're going to finish up now, but we're going to take a break again. We need another break. And what I'll say is this, is at this point here, I'm hoping you're really enjoying the video. And I haven't mentioned this before, but in the video, I always usually mention if you subscribe on the right-hand side below, there's the subscribe button on YouTube. All that does is it just alerts you the next time I make a new video. So you'll see when I've created a new video, and then you can join along and watch. And if you want to jump into and paint along with us here on this channel, you can do that too. You can paint along with us, or you can just watch for fun too. It's also great just to watch, and you'll learn a ton of information by just watching and concentrating on what we're doing here. You don't necessarily have to paint along with us. You know, you could maybe watch it twice and then the third time paint along with us. And I'll tell you what, you'll find that it'll go way easier if you're watching it twice first and not painting with me and drawing with me. And then the third time you paint and draw along with me, you'll really find that you'll have a lot easier time painting this painting if you do it that way. I'm just mentioning that because that's the way I really learned how to watercolor paint, is really by watching a lot of video and then painting too and drawing a lot, but watching a lot of videos at the same point, you know, at the same time. So that really is quite a bit of a help to watch videos, and it really does help to help the process of learning watercolor. Okay, so now we're going to let this dry. And then once we let this dry over here, we're going to put in a little bit of maybe some shadowing on the water with some darks to make it look like there's some really beautiful shadowing going on the water, just to accentuate the water and the beautiful lake scene here that we have. So let's take another break, and then we'll come back and we'll finish up the painting. But as you can see, we did a lot of work, and I think it really looks good. And I think you're going to be happy with your results too, because you really are following along in a systematic fashion with me. And that's all you have to do is just practice these same processes, methods, and techniques that we use all the time on my channel. And you'll absolutely learn watercolor. It won't be a problem. You just keep working with us week after week, month after month, and year after year. And if you're subscribed, that means you won't miss anything. And you'll be on your way to really learning watercolor in a short amount of time. Within 1 or 2 years, I think you'll have it pretty much for the most part. And then it's just a matter of refining your paintings and just practicing more and more and more. And then you'll be able to just do everything in a more, you know, smoother fashion. You'll go a little quicker. You build up rhythm with your paintings so that it goes a little more effortlessly, let's say, instead of maybe more stop and go. But trust me, if you're sticking here, you're going to enjoy the journey of watercolor with me and all of us here on my channel. So let's come back and we'll finish this painting, just the last few details, and we'll have it all buttoned up here, okay? And thank you again for coming by, and we'll see you in just a second. All right, so we're going to finish up now. We've got a beautiful painting here. It's just a matter of now at the final stages of our painting, we don't want to overdo things. I always mention on my videos, you probably heard me say this a million times, but if you're just starting here, maybe, you know, of course you haven't heard it a million times, but usually when we're doing watercolors, we want to do less details and leave the painting a little underfinished. And then you can always wait a couple days or a week later and then come back and look at it and go, oh, do I really need to add in some other this, that, or the other thing, instead of adding, you know, something or other into the painting while you're finishing it up in the session that you're working in when you're actually creating the painting. So what I'm saying is to have a fresher, more pleasant looking painting, you're better off doing less details when you're finishing up your painting, and then you can always go back in and add a few things. But once you start adding too many things, you really can't remove those things. As you know, once you're painting things into your painting, it's very difficult to lift them up and scrub them off and make repairs to your painting, let's say. So for this painting, let's discuss right now how we have a really good painting right here, right now. We could leave it at this point, but I think we could add a few more things, but we wouldn't want to go too much more pushing the limits of adding more things into it. So let's kind of discuss how we're going to do that now. The first thing I do see that I really wanted to change or add something in there would be too many lights over here on the left side of the painting. Remember how we said you kind of want to leave the edges of your painting for the most part, maybe a little quieter, so to speak, for your watercolors. So your painting, your design of your painting. So this is where we would come in with our green and green and a little bit of the blue and purple, gray it down, and try to just put a little bit of a light wash over the left side of your painting like that, just over here. Then you can take a tissue and blot it up a little bit. You just want to make it quiet. You don't want to have a lot of really bright blue sky over here on the left side, if that makes sense, to quiet this area down. Because you want your focus, you want to be more focused in the center of your painting. You want your viewer that's going to view your artwork to kind of find a beautiful spot, a nice area where they can kind of focus in on and stay there for a while and look at it and admire it and enjoy it and kind of, experience the painting. What we wouldn't want is someone to their eyes to start bouncing around and looking over at the edges of the painting. And next thing you know, their eyes are going off the painting and maybe they're deciding to walk to the next painting in the gallery, and you kind of get your painting, they kind of skip over your painting because it's not holding their attention in the middle of the painting. So that's kind of like, well, you'll always hear that. You hear a lot of like pro artists, the real, top pro artists will always tell you, try to keep your viewer like locked into your painting somewhere in the middle and focused in on those areas, and don't let the viewer kind of wander off your painting. So if you can kind of create a focal point in your painting, you'll be much better off. So that's all I'm kind of mentioning here is something that, all the great pro artists will tell you. And when you walk into galleries and look at paintings, you'll kind of see that it does have that sort of design to most paintings, where the painting is going to have more of the most important details in the middle of the painting, so to speak, versus the outer edges of your painting. So we got that accomplished. We kind of made this area quiet over here by putting a light wash over the blue sky area to quiet that down, make it a little bit darker so that you don't kind of see that area really like, kind of popping out, like making a real exciting kind of effect on this side. We want to keep this quiet. Over here, we did a good job of that. We kept our painting quiet over here on the edges, so that's fine. And then now we said we wanted to add some darks over here to the water, just to give ourselves some nice look of some shadowing on the water itself. And you can see how I left that little bit of white paper along the shoreline. That's really important. You can make this darker, a little bit of brown, blue, purple, brown, purple, blue, a little bit of red. Brown, purple, blue, red. And then I just try to do that again and go across again like that. Then what I do is I blot up a little bit around the trees here. Like that. Like that. Like that. blot up a little bit here and there. I try to see if I can make it a little more interesting if I blot up along that line a little bit. Fresh, clean water, and just smooth that out a little bit. And then another little bit of blotting, just to kind of okay, so that looks pretty good. Gives us a little bit of a highlight along the shoreline of that distant mountain. These rocks could be a little darker over here, I think, and then a little bit of shadowing under there, maybe, like that. And we can make these a little darker. Okay, now the last thing we can do is maybe we can take our watercolor brush again here. This is like got a little bit of a better point on it right now than maybe some of the other brushes I have. So let me see if we can get a couple. We could do a couple of these. Some weeds. You want a couple weeds and things over here? Let's get a couple of those in. We make them a couple dark ones, a couple light ones. Just a couple here and there. And then these over here can be a little larger, like that. A couple of these like that. Over here too. I would do a couple in between here. Not too many over here. Again, we're trying to keep that a little bit quiet over there, but like that. And to be honest with you, I think this is perfect the way it is now. We don't have too many details. We do a couple splashes along here. I'm going to do some splashing here just to give it a little bit of a interesting effect. A little bit of splashing over here too as well. Maybe we'll do some birds. It's always beautiful to have some birds in our paintings. I always put birds in for my shore paintings. Maybe some seagulls. Maybe we'll do some blackbirds or some crows or something over here, or some ravens or falcons. Let's see. Now we can make a branch up here. I think we could make a branch over here. That, so you can make a little branch for like a perch for for a bird or two if you want. And then what I would do is I would usually maybe you can look up online different types of birds, and you can kind of use like a reference from your cell phone or your computer, and or a book or a magazine or anything like that to create the shape of a bird. So I think here I can do a pretty good bird here. I think if I just like that. Sometimes it's a little bit difficult if you don't have like a sharp. But I think that looks pretty good. If not, you don't have to worry about it. But I think that looks okay. Put a little bird or two, maybe another one. I tend to like to use my needlepoint brush. So let me see if I can find that. Okay, I found my needlepoint brush here. And if you have to start over, no big deal. You could take the water, again, we did before, you take some fresh, clean water on a paper towel, blot up a little bit, like that. And you can blot up, like if you didn't do the perfect bird you want to do, again, I started off with a really large brush. I should have started off with my needlepoint brush like this, but I use this larger brush, and that's sometimes where you can run into a problem. But we can actually change that around by using our needlepoint brush, and I'll just mix up some purple, brown, and blue, a little bit of red, a little more of a brown, maybe a touch of black to get that nice dark tonal value. Then you can dry off a little bit of the paint on your brush over here, and then we can do maybe something over here. Okay, there we go. That's better. So that's where sometimes, you have to use maybe some specific brushes you might have to pick up eventually to get some more detailed work that you'd like to do. But I think this is good. We have a bird here. Let's do maybe a couple more birds over here flying in the air. All right, excellent. We have some birds flying in the air. We have one here on a branch, and we're all set. We have a beautiful painting. We've done a good amount of detail, but we didn't overdo it, and that's the main thing. And then you can always take a step back a week from now, or a couple weeks or a month from now, and say, do I need to add something into this? But I think you'll be pleased and happy with this painting, how it turns out, if you just kind of stick to a couple little details here and there. We did a couple birds flying in the air, one bird on a branch here, and then some weeds and some twigs and things like that. And we just really covered the basics of this, and it turned out to be a really good-looking landscape painting with some, water in there, a beautiful lake. So let's take a look. We'll maybe peel off the tape now and just kind of see how that looks. Once we lift up the tape, we'll have a little bit of a border on it that makes it look like a mat or a frame, and you'll see how it even crisps it up and makes it look a little better. And then what we'll do is we'll put this in a frame eventually. I hope you'll put yours in a frame with a mat if you find that it turns out really well. Let's take our mat that we originally used and see how it looks. And you can move it around if you have that little bit of that extra inch of space around there. Really comes in handy because you can actually move your mat around a little bit and see how it looks with. But I think that looks good right like that. Perfect. There you go. You have a gorgeous landscape painting with a lake, beautiful trees, water, distant mountains, beautiful foreground, weeds and grasses and things like that for some nice details in the foreground. Good three-dimensional depth in the painting so that you feel like you really are there and you can imagine and kind of experience the atmosphere of being at this scene, seeing that beautiful lake across the whole lake and the mountains in the distance and all the gorgeous, things going on and some birds and things flying in the air. And this is just a wonderful painting. I'm glad you were with me. We painted it together. We had a good time. We covered all the different details you needed. And again, please give it a thumbs up if you like this video and if you want to see more like this. And also, too, there's the subscribe button below on the right-hand side, which just means YouTube will actually just let you know when I make a new video so you don't lose track of me and forget my name or forget my channel. And the next thing you know, you're searching for me and wasting hours of time trying to find me. When you hit subscribe, you won't lose track of me. You'll have my videos just showing up in your YouTube channel when you open up YouTube the next time, okay? All right, so thanks again for watching. Thanks again for all the great comments. I know many of you that have been with me for many years. Thank you for all the beautiful comments, and I'm really thankful. And I'm also thankful that all of you have been supporting me and actually purchasing my new book, which is out on Amazon now. So I'll have to kind of share that on the next video or two. I don't have it handy right now, but I'll show my new book, which is out on Amazon. You basically just type in Chris Petri watercolor book and on Amazon, and you'll see my book there, and you can kind of review it a little bit and see what the covers look like. And we'll also make a new video probably soon where I can show you a little bit of the inside of the book and the different paintings. And we're having a wonderful time painting together, and thanks again for all your support. And we'll see you on the next video. And again, happy painting, and enjoy the journey of watercolor, okay? Enjoy the journey, everybody. We're having a great time here, okay? All right, bye-bye.